Hey, good afternoon. Craig Setzer here. We are checking in on that tropical wave in the Atlantic, and I think I like what I'm seeing here with that wave. So I'm going to go over the first off. If you just want to know, is it coming here part of the broadcast, and then we'll do a deeper dive afterwards. But let's get right to it. I hate for folks to stick around. Oh, got to remind you of one thing. If you like the video, please click the like button, subscribe, and get the notifications as we go through the rest of hurricane season here. I'm going to try to give at least daily updates. There may be a few cases where I miss one or two, but hopefully that's not the case. All right, let's talk about what's going on. First off, with the wave out there, and this is kind of what I do right away. Just get the beginning over with, because a lot of folks just want to know, is it coming here? Do I have to be concerned where I am? Do I need to be thinking about hurricane preparations? And that's mostly what this graphic is focused on. Folks who could potentially be dealing with a threat that might require action. I'm not talking about gusty winds and showers and rain and stuff like that. I'm talking about a big effort that might need to be made. So that's what the conditions there on the right, upper right mean. If you get to high, we're making hurricane preparations. Moderate means we're making preparations to maybe secure lawn furniture and things like that from blowing around, and we're watching closely. Low, we're watching. We're not making any preparations, but we're paying attention. And this, of course, is in the 5-day time frame. So our tropical wave is there to the east-southeast of the islands there, the Windward Islands, east of Trinidad and Tobago, and moving to the west. And now it's been reported moving to the west at 15 to 20. I think that's a little fast. I think it's more in the 10 to 15 mile an hour range. But who needs to watch it over the next 5 days? Mainly the folks in the Windward Islands, mainly the folks in Barbados, the folks in Trinidad and Tobago, and along the north coast of Venezuela, as well as the ABC Islands. I lowered the chances here because the wave is really struggling today. It hasn't gotten any better organized. And in fact, the models are kind of starting to lean away, at least in the next 5 days, and for development with it, which would be a good thing. So it's still going to bring some gusty winds and some rain to the areas in green there, and some of that could extend outside of those areas in green. But all in all, the threat for it to become something in the next 5 days that we need to make preparations for and start watching out for, that is decreasing a little bit. So that's good news, but of course we will keep our eyes on it. If you want to know more about the specifics of the wave, as well as the model forecast, hang around for a deeper dive. All right, so here's our satellite map of the whole basin this afternoon, the whole Atlantic basin, and several features jump out. One, there's this big low pressure area bringing lots of rain to parts of the East Coast as well, especially the Northeast. There is a little upper level low over here. I'll show you that better in the water vapor. There's a little upper low there. The feature that we're looking at is down here, right about there. There is a better developed tropical disturbance out there in the Atlantic. And then finally, there's a little area of thunderstorms there in the middle of the Caribbean, but that's not showing any signs of development. As you can see, the Gulf is looking mostly quiet right now. So let's kind of break it down here and look at different satellite angles. This is close up on the disturbance that we're watching. You can see a bit of a swirl there, but one of the things that's going on is that that swirl is mainly higher up in the atmosphere. We're more concerned when the swirls are down near the ocean surface, and there's really not an indication of that. The other thing you can see here is that the thunderstorms, some have developed here on the north, some have developed here on the south. Unless we get some thunderstorms kind of developing more in that relative center right there, that's not an indication of any quick development. So the fact that the thunderstorms are displaced, an indication that development, if it does occur, is going to be very slow. And also there was a windsat pass And you can see that there's really not any winds going around in a circle here. These winds are from the east and southeast. There's a little bit of southerly wind right there. There's some stronger easterly winds up to the north here. That is going to affect Barbados if it holds together, as well as the Windward Islands, but not a very developed tropical wave at all. We don't see any, even though this was kind of cut in half here by the satellite pass, we don't see really any clear indication of any type of circulation going on there. So once again, that's good news as well. So down here, this is where it is, and you can see the thunderstorms really are not that organized. They appear to be much better organized over here. That's with that pretty good disturbance out there. That's likely going to be the next thing to develop. And then we've got a pretty good tropical wave coming off of Africa right now. Getting late in the season now, we're going to see fewer and fewer of those waves coming off of Africa. And then we have this frontal band that's kind of draped down there. And then showing up there is the upper level low, which may play a role in the overall development cycle of that feature on down to the south. Here is the water vapor loop, and this really kind of highlights lots and lots of different things going on in the atmosphere. The upper level low stands out very, very well. Remember, that's in the upper parts of the atmosphere, so it's not a tropical feature at all. Same with this over here. Now, sometimes if these upper level lows kind of sit over one area for a long time and have persistent thunderstorms, they can start some tropical action near the ocean surface, but these upper lows are moving and there's no indications they're going to develop anything. You can see the disturbance out there in the eastern Atlantic getting better. There's some dry air, that's where it's headed, so that's going to be a limiting factor. And then, of course, our little feature down here looking much less impressive today. So its overall appearance, that's kind of a strike against it. Remember, we look for things that are more round and have that upper level outflow like this had yesterday, more persistent thunderstorms around the center. The only thing right at this moment that may be going in favor of this developing is that it's in a relatively moist environment here that extends from the Atlantic into the Caribbean. The Caribbean's over here. And also the wind shear is relatively low. Just to the north, it's a bit higher, but relatively low near that feature. So a couple things going forward. It does appear that there's many things going against it at this time. Here is that shear product, and let's find our where we are about this disturbance here, this little wave. So the wave is kind of down in here, and it is catching a little bit of wind shear there, but as you can see, there's a big area of low shear now throughout much of the Caribbean. So in this type of case, because all of our indications are if it develops, it would be slow, that means that it's probably going to have to move some way in terms of time before it can develop, and then maybe there's the conditions will remain favorable for development. They're favorable now in the Caribbean, but we never. That's a snapshot there that we're looking at. We never know if that's going to be the case, say 5 days from now. This is what we call the total precipitable water. This basically is the relative humidity in the atmosphere. I showed you on the water vapor loop, and these are high values of relative humidity. And you can see our disturbances there, and there's basically favorable relative humidity values for development there. And finally, going a little bit farther to the west here, one of the other ingredients that we look for is what we call water that is sufficiently warm enough for tropical cyclone development, which basically means is it about 26 degrees C or around 78 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and then is it sufficiently deep enough that if the water gets stirred up, warm water continues to go to the surface. So this is what we typically think of as ocean heat content. This is almost exclusively a product that's produced to talk about tropical storms and hurricanes. And you can see one thing there is the wake of Ian, where Ian did cause some upwelling and cooled the waters in that little area there in the southeast Gulf of Mexico, but there still remains a lot of warm water all around the Caribbean, the central, northwest Caribbean, even into the Bahamas. So there's still a lot of heat potential from that perspective. All right, let's dive into the models here, and you'll notice right away, there's our feature that's out there that I talked about that is most likely to develop, and you can see it moves to the northwest and then to the north, and then the model uncertainty increases as to how quickly it gets carried on to the north. This is what we typically think of potentially as a fish storm because it's going to stay over the oceans. Of course, airplanes and ships will avoid it and avoid its path and stay out of the way, but this doesn't typically, at least the way this looks right now, is not going to affect land. So if this becomes Julia, then we're through our next letter in the alphabet and we don't have to worry about that. In terms of our little disturbance down here, our little tropical wave, you can see the models kind of flashing on and off there because what we're looking at here are what are called hurricane trackers, where either the lowest pressure or a little area of rotation is identified in each of the models there, and then that is tracked. And you can see it kind of flashes on and off because literally the model trackers are having a hard time keeping track of this system in the GFS ensemble here. This is the GFS ensemble, and the models are kind of having a hard time even tracking that feature as it moves to the west. You can see it basically kind of goes over here and then potentially, based on this model run, ends up over there in the kind of in the far southern Gulf of Caribbean there, the far southern Caribbean, near the coast of Colombia, possibly Panama, possibly Costa Rica, and Nicaragua. So, and this is down the road here. This is beyond 5 days, so this is a little beyond our time horizon here of thinking, but basically folks in the southern Caribbean are going to want to keep an eye on this. Of course, we don't turn our attention away from anything this time of year that's down in the Caribbean. Finally, the European ensemble, and this was from this morning's computer model runs. And so basically, here's the time up here in the corner, and we only watched through 10 days here. You can see our system out there, potentially Julia, moving off to the north and northwest there. And then you can see our tropical wave here, which also the European is very reluctant to develop very quickly, but then in the latter periods here, beyond 5 days, does tend to concentrate many of the model members down here. So what does this mean for South Florida? What does this mean for the Gulf? What does this mean for everybody else who's not in this area down here? This means that probably in 5 days or so, this is something we're just going to want to keep an eye on. We want to make sure that it keeps moving. We want to make sure that it doesn't develop. What we don't want to have happen, and there's no indication of that right now, but what we don't want to have happen is that this thing somehow kind of sits over here in this part of the Caribbean. And the reason is because we're getting to the time of the year now where dips in the jet stream come along and they're a little bit deeper, and they tend to want to coax things that are in the southern and western Caribbean to the north. So that's what we don't want to have happen. Once again, no indication of that right now. So that's good news, but feeling pretty good with respect to where things stand right now and the latest model runs here. In fact, I'm feeling so good that the stuff that I brought in for Ian, the lawn furniture and things like that, I am putting back outside because I don't think that I'm going to have to turn around and bring things back in. So my guard, that on edge guard that a lot of folks get during hurricane season when there's anything out there, it's relaxed a little bit. Of course, I have my hurricane plan together. I have my hurricane kit together. Any additional things that I bought for the hurricane kit, I'm holding on to. I'm not touching. I'm just going to stay in place here and watch as we go. And hopefully we're not going to have anything else develop this season. Unfortunately, the one thing that did develop and was a huge impact was Ian, and of course the folks in Puerto Rico. Fiona was a big event there. And then, of course, we can't remember the folks in the Canadian Maritimes who had to deal with Fiona as well. So once again, if you like what you see, click the like button. Please subscribe. Please get the notifications. Anything like that is always appreciated. It helps elevate my platform on YouTube. So that's it for today. I'll check back in tomorrow with you right around 4:30.